What up, Sergeant Boykin? How's it going, man?
Mac, how are you?
I'm well, sir. I'm well. I'm well. I'm well. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to talk with me, man.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
I really do appreciate it. I know you must be busy during this time.
Good, I'm good.
All right, let's get right into it then, man. I mean, I've met you a few times briefly. I mean, if you want to just go into who you are and like exactly what you do, that would be great.
So what I do here at the police station, I am the diversity officer. I deal with any issues, dealing with, race relations. I also work on retention, where we want to try to keep the new officers on the job, try and make sure that they're comfortable here in the job. And part of that's making sure that they feel comfortable in their environment. I also do recruiting. I go out and I hit the community and I try to recruit. I try to go into the inner city and try and get people to become police officers who live here. They're the ones that know this area the best, and that's who I try to recruit. I also go to the colleges. Excuse me, sorry about that. I also go to the colleges. I go to all kinds of organizations like the YWCA, YMCA, Boys and Girls Clubs. If I were to see you at a Starbucks, I would even talk to you. Any viable candidate, I will try and recruit to become a police officer. So, in a nutshell, I just do anything that's regarding diversity and retention and recruitment.
All right, sounds good. Well, the reason that I wanted to talk to you, today, was obviously, with everything going on in the world, I wanted to get a different perspective, and I'm so lucky that I had the relationship with Tyus that he knew you that I could actually connect with you, and so the conversation that I want to focus on today is just um, one, what is going on um, in America today, two, what led to this point, why is it happening, and three, how can we move past it? And I know it's a conversation that can last forever, but just briefly, could you just kind of go into your opinion if you wouldn't mind,
Okay, are you talking about the George Floyd incident or just all the
Yes.
turmoil? Okay,
The George Floyd situation.
The George Floyd incident. I think every police officer throughout this country will say that what that police officer was absolutely, totally despicable, was wrong. Um, the officer obviously used horrible judgment, and what he did it's undeniably it's a crime. So he's paying for his actions now. The issue here is their policies and procedures. Now, I'm not from Minneapolis, so I don't know what their policies and procedures are, but that technique that he used, that may be permitted under their policies and procedures, which I would find to be incredibly stupid. But I'm not sure what they have for policies. So I did see the incident, and so um, looking at that incident, it was for a $20 counterfeit bill.
Yeah.
So and I don't know what kind of uh, environment they have in Minneapolis. I know it's considered one of the Twin Cities, which it's probably one of the biggest cities in Minnesota. But I'm sure they have other things they can do besides, you know, going after people for counterfeit money. Now that's it's a crime, but it's usually just a summons. So
Hmm.
I don't know if there was some underlying issues besides that counterfeit money or not, but regardless, it turned out horribly, and the officer was totally wrong. So, I mean, the whole incident in today's world, we have so much technology with closed circuit television and people's cell phones,
Yeah.
and the arrogance that officer showed, even while he was being videotaped by several people. is just, I can't believe he even acted like that.
Yeah.
But there's no excuse. And I believe I share sentiment with 99.9% of all police officers in the world that we thought that was a horrific incident, and the officer showed no empathy for the person he had, Mr. Floyd. He had showed no empathy for him when he was pleading for him to get off his neck because he couldn't breathe. Now, I know we here at the Worcester Police Department, our policies and procedures, they are tweaked every other day to make sure that we're acting accordingly, and every officer is going to be held accountable for their actions. As far as the Worcester Police Department, you may have officers who have their prejudices, they may have their dislikes, some may be xenophobic, some may be homophobic, but when they put their uniform on, and this is my point of view from what I've seen, I've been on the job for 26 years, when they put the uniform on, they treat everybody according to the letter of the law. And I'm going to say that sometimes there are incidents where, you have struggles or anything like that, but we haven't had a police shooting or officer-involved shooting in 37 years. I think that's a very good record. And there's been several incidents where I reviewed the incident, and there could have been some serious bodily injuries from the incidents I've seen. And one that I can think of off the top of my head is the one that was over at the on Franklin Street. They had it was a pretty significant crowd. I think they were promoting a rap group or something like that, which is, I have no problem with that at all. But the incident became very volatile, and several officers were called to the scene. And even though a female police officer, was thrown to the ground, had a hair pulled out of her head, was kicked, and another officer, they were trying to grab his weapon. Nobody was seriously injured, and no cops had to, defend themselves as far as their actions, because they did everything appropriately. So I compare ourselves to Minneapolis, and I think that we are eons ahead of them, just based off of that incident. Now, I don't know much about that city. So, but what happens here, Mac, right? You have an incident like that caught on video, and it goes viral worldwide. So now what happens is that incident that police officer is involved in, now all police consider to be like that. That's not the case.
Yeah.
Police officers are people. You have police officers who make some good decisions and some make bad decisions. Unfortunately, some go under the radar where they become police officers, and it's not till later on in their career where they do something that is so significant that they have to be relieved of duty. So we do have, there is a technique that they use. It's called early warning system, where we try to find the troubled police officers. If they're like if they're like aggressive and confrontational, they try to weed them out, but sometimes some slide under the radar. So, like I said before, I would put our police department up against any of the well-known police departments throughout the world, because I think that we do a pretty good job here in the city of Worcester.
Yeah, no, you guys definitely do, and you guys definitely do, and the reason why I reached out to you is because I actually know a few Worcester cops. I know Farraco, Girardi. They coached me when I was little, so I know these are good guys, and the perception, like you said, that is being spread around is one view of police and one view of cops and their actions, and that's why I wanted to have you on. Could you go in more in depth about the procedures and the variations between the different cities and states, and why that actually is, and why there isn't, you know, one uniform code of conduct for police.
Yeah, those officers you mentioned, they were my classmates, um, and we had a very large class. I think we were the biggest class in the city of Worcester Police Department history. We started off with 63 recruits, and we ended up with 53 that graduated in our class. And later on, I graduated April 4th, 1994, and then we had another class, November 4th, 94, that had, I don't know if they had quite as many as we did, but they probably had up near 50. So
Yeah.
um, we had a lot of turnover before that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Could you go more in depth about what you were talking about earlier in terms of the different procedures of how it actually varies from state to state and why that actually is? You know, because I would just naturally assume that if police are one, you know, unit, there would be a uniform code of conduct and procedures for police as a whole nationwide.
Yeah. Well, we all have federal standards that we have to follow, and then we also each state, they have their own rules that they can put in place. In Massachusetts, our rules are more stringent than the federal rule. So, where say if you had like uh, a federal rule where you can do search warrants, no knock search warrants. Federally, they may grant you permission to do no knock search warrants, but the state of Massachusetts, they can say that you don't have that right to do no knock search warrants. So each state, they can implement their own strategies on how they want to fine tune the federal standards. But so what you have here, okay, policing is different in every community because like in the inner cities like Boston, New York, LA, it's so populated that they're busy and they have different types of crime. You know, you may have um, drugs that are prevalent in the community. You may have um, you know, smuggling people from Mexico, like if you're at the borders there. Then you go to like other cities that are a little bit smaller, like Worcester, Springfield, and cities of that size, and they're also busy, but not to the magnitude of like a LA or a Boston. So in Worcester, we're busy. We have approximately about 400 police officers, and in a population of about 280,000 people that live here. But it gets up over 180,000 people, but it gets up over 200,000 when you have the communities that come in for work. So you have 400 police officers that have to police that number of people. So we have same types of crimes they have in Boston and New York, just at a little bit lesser level. But now you get into the more rural areas, like say New Hampshire, Vermont, and areas like that, and their policing is going to be different. So here in the city, we're busy. We have all kind of units to take care of certain things. We have gang unit, we have vice squad, we have detective bureau. But in those smaller communities, those police officers in the rural areas, they have to do all that stuff, those specialties themselves. So you might have a police officer that stops you in New Hampshire, not on the state, not the state police, but like in one of the smaller towns, and he might have to, arrest you, write the report, do the court case, and do the investigation. So he does it all himself. And a lot of times, they'll I don't want to say that they'll stop cars, that are outside of their community, but it's pretty known that if you have a license plate that's not from New Hampshire, and let's face it, you may have racial profiling, It's possible. It's a reality. We all know that.
Yeah.
You may stop just for those reasons alone. It's less prevalent here in the city because we have a bigger fish to fry, so to speak. So each community, they police their community according to their population. Like the rural areas, they don't have much interaction with people. I'll use Maine, for instance. It's a vacation area.
Yeah.
So during the vacation time, say like from June to like September, you're gonna have a lot more people in the state of Maine vacationing. So they bring on more police officers. But when they don't have those people there, it's very, very quiet. So some police officers want to stay busy, so they'll stop a car for minor infractions, like like if a car goes through a yellow light just turns red, they may stop you, or they may stop you for if you look like you're going over the speed limit, even if it's by 1 or 2 to 5 miles per hour. So they'll police their community according to the population. In Massachusetts, we have a much more stringent court of law type of stuff that we deal with. So we have to be held accountable and held to a higher standard that we have to justify our stops in any encounters that we have. So it depends where you live. I can only speak for where I live and the places that I visit. And for the most part, I've been stopped before. I believe it was because of racial profiling, but I don't know that. But in the back of my mind, it's always there. Is he stopped me because of this? So what we want to do here in the city of Worcester, we want to make it so everybody here feels comfortable. We want to have a police department that reflects our community. We also want educated police officers, and we look to have police officers from this community. They're the ones that know the community the best. They can go into their communities where they can probably diffuse problems, or they know the problem people, they know the problem houses, and it's just a big advantage when you have people who are from the area where they're going to be patrolling.
Mm-hmm. Could you go into how you guys profile recruits and how you select them, and what type of training actually goes into them becoming officers?
Yeah. Well, we try to recruit from, like I said, anywhere. We have a lot of ex-military people that are here. So if you're a military person that was in the military during the conflict, when you take the exam and you pass, you go right to the top of the list. So military people are that's some of the people that we target. Colleges, because in today's policing, education is very, very crucial. So we'll hit the colleges. Like I don't know if you were at school when I went over there and I talked to the multicultural department there.
Yeah.
Actually we're actually doing some events at high schools, because you could take the exam at 19 years old, but you can't become a police officer until you're 21 years old. So we've been going to the high schools, and if the test falls, just right for them, they might take the test and be eligible to become a police officer 2 years later. So high schools, like I said, the YW and YMCA, Boys and Girls Club. I even work with Mass Hire. I'm also going into some of the schools where you have the trouble kids that they're not so bad, where they can still become police officers. I'm trying to get them on the right path. So we'll go anywhere. Like if I see you in Dunkin' Donuts, I'll go to Starbucks and anywhere. If I'm in a grocery store and I see somebody who looks eligible, I will talk to them. I'll give them my card.
Yeah.
Because they're from the community. So once we get them to take the test, And the test is given by civil service, and it's usually you take the test. You usually sit at like Doherty High School. I think lately they've been doing North High School for the test, for the exam, the entry level exam. So once you take that exam, it takes a little while before you get your scores back, and they usually send it to you via email. Once you get your score, civil service will send us an eligibility list. Once we get that list, we'll look at the candidates, and we'll have a unit. It's called the background unit. They'll have that list, and they'll eliminate people by doing background checks on them or credit history checks on them. You have to have a valid driver's license. So they'll go through a bunch of criteria to see if this person is eligible to become a police officer. Once they have an eligibility list, that's when they'll start going out and doing personal interviews. Now, before anybody's hired, sometimes the chief will have an interview with them as well. So once they get their list filled, say if we're looking for 30 people, I'm just going to go over and put my charger on because my battery's dying here. But anyway, so once we have that list, now we'll have the background unit send the list over to City Hall, and City Hall will send out cards or emails to those who are eligible to become candidates for the class. Once they get their card and they accept the offer, then they will enter into the police class. And once they're in that police class, they'll have, I think it's 22 weeks of class. They'll have hands-on training such as they do defensive tactics, they do motor vehicle stops, they'll do they'll have to go out and drive. They'll have them go out and drive, like it'd be a mock pursuit type of a scenario. But they'll have a ton of classroom work where they'll go over constitutional law, they'll go over criminal law, they'll go over motor vehicle law, they go domestic to get all the domestics, the sexual assault. They have a lot of book work that they have to do that before they can graduate from the class. And I think we have one of the best academies. I'm tooting our horn, but I think it's one of the best in the country. The police officers who come out, they are so well versed in laws and in constitutional laws and in sexual assault and domestics that it makes it easier for their bosses to do their job. So once they graduate and they get out there, they'll go do so many weeks of field training with a training officer. And then after that, they can put their bids on to go where they want to. Like say they have service division where that's where you go if you came here and you wanted to bail somebody out or you want to find someone as an arrest or anything of that nature. Then they'll have operations. Those are the cruisers that are out there. They patrol the city. There are 4 quadrants in the city. You have the southeast, southwest, northeast, and northwest. So the southwest would be like Main South area, and the northwest would be like Elm Park, Salisbury Street, in that area. So you'll have 5 routes within each sector, and there's 20 routes throughout the city. So they can also bid to go onto a shift. We have 3 shifts. We have days, which is 7 to 3 and 8 to 4. Then you have what we call first half, which is the night shift, which is going to be from 3 to 11 and 4 to midnight. And you have the overnight shift, which is from 11 to 7 and midnight to 8. So the officers they're going to be on probation, they can bid to go on those shifts. And depending on how you do in a class, from first being the best to how many people in the class, if there's 20 to 20th, you'll have a better chance of getting where you put your bid if you're in the top 5 opposed to the bottom 5. So once they get those bids in, the chief and the deputies, they'll assign them to wherever they put in or wherever they're needed. They will put them where they need, and they have the right and ability to put them in a place that they need, as opposed to where they want to go. So it's a fairly long process, but it goes by fast. I'm already in my 27th year, and it feels like I just started yesterday.
Yeah.
And it's been very rewarding for me, because I've been one of the lucky ones. I've landed on my feet wherever I've gone, and it's been very good for me. So I'm going to be out there like for a little while longer, and trying to recruit and giving all the information that people need to know, that can make them either want to say, yes, I want to be a police officer, or no, it's not for me.
Could you go into how officers are actually held accountable when they do the wrong thing?
Well, yeah. I don't know what kind of process they have in Minneapolis, but I can tell you what we have here is we have it's was formerly known as Internal Affairs, which is now known as Professional Standards. And if we have a complaint lodged against a police officer here, it's sent to Professional Standards, and they do a total investigation. And after they do the investigation, your fate is decided by whatever the outcome is that they found. Now, there's they usually have a series that they have, like, it can be not guilty, exonerated, found. They have a lot of technical words that they use, but you're basically investigated, and you're either guilty, found guilty, or exonerated, which means that you're not guilty. And sometimes you'll have, like, the officer did do what the complaint was, but it was within his rights. So as far as Minneapolis, I don't know. I don't know what they have for their internal affairs. So I don't know how they do theirs, but for the most part, most police departments throughout the country basically have the same type of internal affairs or professional standards unit. So in his case, he was charged criminally. So now it's going to be in the DA's hands. So it's not even going to be an internal type thing. It's going to be the district attorney's office who's going to be they took out the charges. Actually, he was arrested. I think he was arrested that day. So he'll have a little some things that he's going to have to go and answer to. So in this case, because we have these video recordings and these phones and these closed circuit televisions, in his case, it was caught on video, and in video you can't lie. It's right there in black and white or color, whatever it is. And so he's going to have to answer for those problems that he's got in front of him. And it's unfortunate, and it's set policing and race relations back some. So it's just going to be something that we're just going to have to try and gain the faith and the confidence back in the community. With that being said, the media, they have a lot to do with how police departments are thought of. Like with that incident in Minneapolis, even though it happened several miles away from the city of Worcester, we have protests here. And don't get me wrong, I'm not against the peaceful protesting at all. Not at all. I'm all for it. But the media can make it. In this case, it was horrific. So I mean, there's no denying that. But the media can actually, the way they present it to their audience, they can make something look that was pretty trivial look very serious, or they can make something serious look trivial. So we have to be careful on, what we read, what we see, and what we hear. We have to, like anything else, that officer in Minneapolis is going to have what they call due process. And that means he's going to be going through the court system where there's going to be an investigation, and he's going to have the right to have his accusers in front of him. But this one was pretty self-explanatory, so we'll just have to see what happens with that one.
All right. So I know you're pretty busy. So I'm gonna let you go after this one. How do we move forward? What are the next steps?
How do we go forward from here in?
How do we move forward?
Well, just like in any relationship, you need to have honesty. So you have to have those honest discussions, real discussions, and you can't be afraid to say, racism is alive and thriving. You can't be afraid to admit when you're at fault. We're in a system that was flawed for people of color. It's obvious. You might want to check out a couple of Netflix series that just came out by Ava DuVernay. She was the person who did the Central Park Five, which was a documentary about 5 black males from New York City who were accused of rape, and they were later found not guilty, but they spent several years in prison. Some of them were like 16 years old, and they were sent to Rikers Island, where they were actually with adults. But that's one you might want to look at. But it's called, this one I'm talking about, it's called The 13th. It's very informative. It goes back to the Jim Crow era, where people of color, blacks to be more at point, were targeted, and some were lynched. There was all kinds of incivilities that were involved with that. So it's called The 13th. You might want to watch that. But for us going forward as a police department, we have to gain trust, a partnership. We have to get out there in the community and let them know that we hear them. Let them know that they are part of us, we are part of them. And be honest. And you cannot be afraid to open up dialogue. That's part of my job. But the chief, he likes getting out there, and he's a community-oriented person. He's going to all kinds of organizations. He's out there in the community, and he enjoys it, and he listens, and he brings that back to our department. He tries to work with his deputies to see how we can make the department better, how make it work for the community. Like I said a minute ago, we're just an extension of the community. So we're considered peacekeepers opposed to law enforcement. We know that we need to look at the drug problem as try to battle that with treatment opposed to criminal arrests. But I can't say that it's not going to be arrest, because it all depends on each case, because each case is independent of itself. So when they're talking about they want social workers to go out there and do the jobs of the police officers, police officers have been social workers since day one. We have to, go into people's homes. We have to evaluate, then we have to make decisions on how we're going to handle that case. So we're social workers, we're peacekeepers, we're, law enforcement should be, down the totem poles when it comes to dealing with situations. At times we have to you're forced to provide law enforcement. And like I said, each case will dictate on how that will come out. So going forward, we just need to just keep some of those things I just mentioned to you out in the open, and we need to pay attention to what our community is saying. We need to know about poverty. We need to know who's underprivileged. We need to know who's, we need to know about LGBTQ and make sure that they're safe. And we need to know who the bad players are in the community, and we need to go out there and deal with that accordingly. And we need to help the community, because the best people that can supply information are people who live in that community. They know who's doing what, who the drug dealers are, who the good people are. People, if there's domestics in a house every day, but the woman's afraid to call, we need to have the community call so we can go there and speak to the parties involved. And, maybe we'll have a domestic violence unit go there and work on them getting some type of counseling. And if it's so bad we need to make an arrest, we can make an arrest. So, things like that. We need to be out there and involved and engage. We have to get that bridge back to the community and make sure that it goes both ways. We go there and they come here. So going forward, if we can do some of those things, and maybe come up with some other ideas that will make this community safer, make it where people have more equal opportunity. Because let's face it, it's things like that cause the problems. When you have the underprivileged in the areas where, they're stuck, you're going to have your problems, because, a lot of people don't want to be in an underprivileged situation. And we need to go out there where maybe we can have job fairs. We can have job fairs. We can help them get groceries if they need groceries. There's a multitude of things that we can do that will make this police department more attractive to our community. So going forward, if we do some of those things, I think that it will help with race relations and help towards poverty and whatever else that that's negative in the community.
All right. Thank you, Sergeant Boykin. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it, man. And you want to come see me so we can talk about you becoming a recruit? You got my information.
All right, man. Thank you for your time, man. And I'll send you the link for this when it's all said and done. And I appreciate you, man. Thank you for everything you do.
My pleasure. Stay safe. Stay healthy.
All right, man. Have a great day.
I do the same. Take care. Bye-bye.